A woman seduces a priest and becomes obsessed with him. He has a very large birthmark between his legs, she shouted during Mass, and everyone turned pale. 9 months later, a terrifying truth is revealed. Samuel was in his office, absorbed in reading a Bible passage, searching for inspiration for Sunday's sermon. His mind, however, was distracted, caught in thoughts about Anna, the young woman who had started attending church a few months ago. Since her arrival, Anna had shown a particular interest in Samuel, constantly asking for advice and companionship. At first, Samuel had taken her interest as that of any other member of the congregation, but over time, he began to notice that her presence unsettled him more than it should. As he tried to concentrate, the sound of the door softly opening made him look up. Anna entered the office with a smile that seemed more seductive than innocent. She wore a simple dress, but the way she wore it made it hard not to notice her figure. "Pastor, do you have a moment?" Anna asked, her voice low and filled with barely disguised tension. Samuel nodded, closing the Bible and trying to keep his composure. "Sure, Anna, how can I help you?" Anna stepped closer, too close, and sat on the edge of the desk. Her knee brushed against Samuel's, and he tensed. Anna looked him in the eye, her pupils gleaming with a hint of challenge. "Pastor, I've been thinking a lot, about you, about us." Anna paused, watching Samuel's reaction. "I think you feel the same way I do, even though you try to hide it." Samuel swallowed, trying to discreetly pull away, but he was trapped between the chair and the desk. "Anna, what you're saying, it's not appropriate. You're a confused young woman, and my duty is to guide you toward righteousness, not toward sin." Anna smiled, but this time there was something dangerous in her expression. "Samuel, I'm not as innocent as you think. I know what I want, and I want you. If you don't make me yours, I'll tell the whole church you're seducing me." Samuel felt a chill in his stomach. The threat was real, and the worst part was that he knew, even though he had done nothing wrong, the mere accusation could destroy his life. "I can't do that, Anna. What you're proposing is a sin. We need to stop this before it goes too far." Anna stood up, her face hardened. "If you don't, I'll speak during the service. And I won't just talk, I'll say that you started it all. I'll say you have a birthmark under your groin, something only someone close to you would know." "How will you explain that to your wife and the congregation?" Samuel paled. How did she know that? It was something he had only shared with his wife, something no one else should know. Anna's defiant look made it clear, she knew too much. "Anna, you're playing with fire." Samuel tried to stay calm, but his voice trembled slightly. "Think about what you're doing, about the consequences this will have for both of us." Anna turned toward the door. "You have until Sunday to decide, Samuel. Either make me yours, or I'll ruin your life." Samuel watched her leave, his mind spinning. He knew he was trapped in a desperate situation, one that could destroy everything he had built. Sunday came too fast. Samuel hadn't slept well in days, his mind clouded by Anna's threat. He had refused to give in to her demands, trusting that his faith and integrity would protect him. But as he walked into the church that morning, he couldn't ignore the feeling of impending disaster. The church was full, as it was every Sunday. The congregation smiled and greeted Samuel as he walked to the pulpit. But he could barely return their smiles, his stomach tied in knots of anxiety. The service began, his voice strong and firm as he recited the scriptures. But then, midway through the sermon, Anna stood up from her seat at the back of the church and walked to the front. The congregation murmured in confusion as she advanced, her face showing a mix of anger and defiance. "Pastor Samuel, I need to say something," Anna declared, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. Samuel froze, his heart pounding frantically in his chest. He tried to maintain his composure, but he knew what was coming. "Anna, this isn't the time or the place," he tried to say, but Anna interrupted him, raising her hand to silence him. No. This is exactly the time and place, Anna said firmly. I've come here today to confess that I've been the victim of a man who is supposed to be our spiritual guide, but who has used his position to try and seduce me. The congregation erupted in whispers. The looks of disbelief and scandal turned towards Samuel. He raised his hands in an attempt to calm the crowd, but the situation was slipping out of his control. That's a lie. I've done none of what she's saying, Samuel said, desperately trying to control the situation. I never tried to seduce her, or anyone. Anna smiled coldly. Really? Will you deny everything, Pastor? Then tell me, how do I know you have a birthmark under your groin? A mark your wife hasn't seen in years. A terrifying silence fell over the church. Samuel's wife, who had been sitting in the front row, stood up, her face pale as wax. Her eyes filled with tears of disbelief and pain. Samuel, please tell me it's not true, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Samuel turned to her, his face full of despair. Love, I swear, it's not true. I don't know how she knows that, but I swear I've done nothing. Anna stepped forward, her expression triumphant. There's no point in continuing to lie, Samuel. Everyone here has heard it. Everyone knows what you've done. You should confess and face the consequences. Panic took over Samuel. He realized there was no way out of the situation. Everything he had built, his reputation, his family, his church, was falling apart before his eyes. And the worst part was that he didn't know how to stop it. Tears streamed down his wife's face, and the sound of murmurs grew around him. Samuel felt the world closing in on him. Anna had won, and there was nothing he could do about it. The tension in the church was palpable. After Anna's explosive accusation, the religious community was divided and bewildered. Those who had known Samuel for years couldn't believe that their pastor, a seemingly upright man, was capable of such depravity. However, Anna's words echoed in their minds, and the image of a vulnerable Samuel, without clear answers, didn't help his defense. The church board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Samuel arrived with a tired face, his eyes red from tears and lack of sleep. He knew the meeting would be a trial, and though he was innocent, he had no evidence to support him. His wife, with whom he had tried unsuccessfully to speak after the incident, was not by his side. He knew that the distance between them grew with every passing minute. We are here to discuss the serious accusations that Anna has made against Samuel, began the board president, an elderly man with a solemn air. This is a very delicate matter, and we must approach it with seriousness. Samuel took a deep breath, preparing for what was to come. He tried to ignore the cold, accusatory stares he felt on him. His heart was pounding, and guilt, though unfounded, began to take hold of him. He knew that in his position, mere suspicion was enough to destroy his reputation. Pastor Samuel, we understand that this situation is difficult for you, said the president, his eyes fixed on Samuel's. But you must understand that the church must protect its members, especially the young and vulnerable. We cannot allow these accusations to go unanswered. Samuel stood up, his voice trembling as he tried to defend himself. I assure you I have done nothing wrong. Anna has set a trap for me. I have never touched her, nor any other woman in this church. Please, believe me. Samuel's words fell heavy in the silence of the room. No one interrupted him, but there were no signs of support either. Every glance that met his was filled with distrust and judgment. Anna, who had been invited to the meeting, slowly rose from her seat. Her face showed a mixture of feigned pain and determination. I'm sorry, Samuel, but I can't keep hiding the truth. It hurts me deeply that you keep denying it, but everyone here deserves to know what really happened. A wave of murmurs swept through the room, and the tension increased. The board, composed of men and women who had worked with Samuel for years, exchanged nervous glances. They knew that any decision they made would have devastating consequences. "Anna," said the president, in a grave tone, "are you willing to swear that what you've said is true?" Anna nodded slowly, her voice breaking with feigned emotion. "I swear it. On my honor and my faith, I swear it. Samuel seduced me, and I can't live with that lie." The board members nodded slowly, as if they had already made a decision before the meeting. Samuel felt his world crumbling. He knew what was coming next. "We have reached a decision," said the president, his voice firmer now. "Samuel, while we do not wish to judge you without conclusive evidence, we cannot allow the situation to continue. To protect the integrity of the church and the safety of our members, we ask that you resign from your position as pastor." Samuel felt his breath catch. The words blurred in his mind, and for a moment, he couldn't react. But the reality was undeniable. His life, as he knew it, was over. He rose slowly, his gaze fixed on the ground. "I resign." The words left his mouth before he could stop them. He turned and left the room, leaving behind the church, the congregation, and a life he had devoted to faith. As he stepped outside, the cool air hit him, but it offered no comfort. He knew that what lay ahead would be even harder to endure. The news of Samuel's resignation quickly spread throughout the community. When he arrived home, his wife, Marta, was already waiting for him with tear-filled eyes and a broken heart. She had been listening to the neighbors whisper and knew what had happened at the church. "Samuel, please tell me that all of this is a lie," Marta pleaded, her voice trembling as she clung to her husband's arm. Samuel looked at her with eyes full of pain. He wanted to tell her that it was all a farce, that nothing Anna had said was true. But he knew it was pointless. Marta no longer trusted him. "Marta, it's not true, I swear. I never did anything with Anna. She made it all up to destroy me," Samuel tried to explain, his voice broken. But Marta shook her head, unable to accept his words. "And how does she know about that birthmark?" "Samuel, I don't know what to believe anymore." Samuel felt his heart break as he saw the desperation in his wife's eyes. "Someone must have told her, but it wasn't me. I don't know how it happened, but I swear I never touched her." Marta stepped away from him, unable to look him in the face. "I can't keep doing this, Samuel. I can't live with the doubt, with the fear that what she says is true. I need time, I need space." Samuel knew what that meant. His home, his family, everything was lost. Samuel's children, who had overheard the conversation from the door, ran to their mother, seeking comfort. But they did not look at Samuel. They no longer saw him as the protective father he had always been. Now he was just a man fallen from grace. "Dad, is it true?" his eldest son asked, his voice breaking. Samuel knelt before him, tears in his eyes. "No, son. It's not true. But I understand that it's hard to believe me now." Marta could bear no more. She took her children by the hand and headed for the door. "We're leaving, Samuel. I don't know for how long, but I can't be here right now." Samuel watched them leave, his heart sinking further with every step they took toward the door. He knew he could lose everything because of a lie, an unfounded accusation. And the worst part was that there was nothing he could do to stop it. He was left alone in the house that had once been full of love and laughter. Now, only silence and bitterness remained. He collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to cry without restraint. His life had been destroyed by a lie, a slanderous accusation hurled with malice by a spiteful young woman. Samuel realized he was alone, utterly alone in a world that had once seen him as a spiritual guide. Now, he was just a man fallen from grace, stripped of everything he loved and cherished. Samuel walked along the dusty road, carrying only a small suitcase in his hand and a heart full of sorrow. It had been 2 weeks since he left the town he once called home. Disillusionment, betrayal, and loneliness had consumed him, and with every step he took, he moved further away from everything that had once been important to him. He arrived at a small town, hidden among hills and forests, where the pace of life was slow and the people seemed unaware of the pain he carried inside. There, he decided to start over, though he knew he would never be able to forget what he had lost. Upon reaching the town center, Samuel saw a small stone church, humble but welcoming. He approached slowly, feeling a mix of hope and fear. The priest, an elderly man with a kind smile, greeted him with open arms. "Good morning, son," said the priest, his warm voice contrasting with the coldness Samuel had felt for so long. "You seem to have traveled far. What brings you here?" Samuel hesitated before answering. "I'm looking for a place to start over, where I can redeem myself from the mistakes I've made." The priest looked at him with compassion. "Redemption is a long road, but there's always a beginning. If you need help, this place always has its doors open." Grateful for the welcome, Samuel decided to stay. He found a small job helping in the church and the community, where he could keep his mind occupied and his hands busy. The townspeople quickly accepted him without asking about his past. To them, Samuel was a hardworking and devoted man, a soul who had come to help in times of need. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Samuel devoted himself fully to his new life, helping the elderly, caring for the sick, and offering comforting words to those in need. But every night, when he closed his eyes, the image of his family and his home destroyed by a lie came back to haunt him. Time passed, and with it, the memories began to fade, though the wound never fully healed. 5 years went by in silence, without any news from the town he had left behind. Samuel had no way of knowing how his wife and children were, or if they would ever forgive him for something he had never done. Anna was on her deathbed, consumed by an illness that had come suddenly. Her body, once young and full of life, was now weak and worn. She felt the weight of her conscience as never before, and she knew her days were numbered. For years, Anna had lived with the remorse of what she had done to Samuel. Her lies, driven by a sick obsession, had destroyed the life of an innocent man. Though she had achieved what she wanted at the time, the price she had paid was far too high. The guilt had eaten away at her from the inside, and now, on the verge of death, she couldn't carry that burden to the other side. "Please, bring a priest," Anna asked weakly, as the nurses looked at her with concern. The priest arrived shortly after, a young man who had yet to know the dark depths of the human soul. He sat by Anna's bedside, taking her cold, wrinkled hand. "Daughter, I am here to hear your confession," the priest said, his voice gentle and comforting. "Do not be afraid. God is willing to forgive all his children." Anna closed her eyes, breathing with difficulty. She knew she had to confess, that she had to tell the truth before it was too late. "Father, I have committed a terrible sin, one that destroyed the life of an innocent man," Anna began, feeling the words burn in her throat. 5 years ago, I accused a man named Samuel of something he never did. I slandered him, completely destroyed his life. The priest listened in silence, without judgment, waiting for her to continue. "I was obsessed with Samuel. I wanted him to make me his, but he rejected me. I couldn't bear it, so I made up a lie. I said he had seduced me, and I did it in front of the whole church, where everyone could hear me." Anna paused, struggling to breathe. "It was a lie, Father. It was all a lie. Samuel never touched me. I made up the story about the birthmark under his groin because I saw it years ago when I was a nurse and he had gallbladder surgery. But no one knew that, everyone believed me because I was so convincing." The priest was shocked, but he kept his composure. He knew his duty was to listen and offer comfort, not to judge. "Daughter, why did you do something so terrible?" he asked gently. Anna felt the tears begin to run down her cheeks. "Because I couldn't stand the rejection, because I became obsessed with him. And when he rejected me, I wanted revenge. But that revenge destroyed not only his life but mine as well. I have lived with this guilt for 5 long years, and now, at the end of my days, I cannot die without telling the truth." The priest squeezed her hand tightly, trying to give her some peace. "God is merciful, and though your actions were terrible, He will forgive you if you repent with all your heart. Are you willing to seek His forgiveness?" Anna nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her guilt begin to lift slightly. "Yes, Father. I want to be forgiven, though I know I can never undo the harm I caused Samuel." The priest gave her absolution, and although Anna felt some relief, she knew that what she had done could never be undone. Her words, however, would not stay confined to that room. The priest understood the gravity of what Anna had revealed, and he knew that Samuel, wherever he was, deserved to know the truth. That same night, Anna passed away in peace, leaving behind a legacy of lies and destruction. The priest, knowing he could not remain silent, began to investigate Samuel's whereabouts, determined to bring him the truth he so desperately needed. The midday sun filtered through the tree leaves, casting dancing shadows over the dusty road that led to Samuel's new town. Since he arrived there, he had rebuilt his life from the ashes, keeping his heart close to the hope of ever returning to his former congregation. He had lost everything, his family, his honor, his faith in humanity, all because of a lie that banished him from his own home. As Samuel swept the floor of the small church where he now worked, a group of people slowly approached along the road. They were members of his former congregation, those who had once trusted him as their pastor and spiritual leader. Samuel looked up, and recognizing them, felt a knot form in his stomach. He couldn't imagine why they had come to find him after all these years. "Samuel," one of the men said as they reached the entrance of the church, his voice filled with conflicting emotions, "we need to talk to you. It's about Anna." Samuel felt his heart stop for a second. Anna's name evoked in him a mixture of pain, anger, and betrayal. With a weary gesture, he invited them inside the church, where they sat in the wooden pews, in silence, waiting for one of them to start speaking. "Anna, she passed away a few days ago," said one of the women, an elderly lady with a face marked by the wrinkles of age, but with eyes that still reflected the strength of her spirit. Samuel didn't know what to feel. For years, he had tried to forget Anna and everything she represented, but her death brought with it a strange sense of closure, though he still didn't know why they were there. "Before she died," continued another man, who used to be one of the most respected elders of the congregation, "Anna made a confession that changes everything we believed we knew." The silence in the church deepened, and the air felt thick with tension that could be cut with a knife. Samuel swallowed hard, bracing himself for the worst. "Anna confessed that everything she said about you was a lie," the elderly woman interjected, her voice shaky but firm. "She was obsessed with you, wanted you to desire her as a woman, but when you rejected her, she was filled with resentment and decided to destroy you. She made it all up, Samuel. The birthmark, the seduction, it was all a cruel revenge." Samuel felt the world crumble around him. For so long, he had lived under the weight of a lie that destroyed his life, and now, the truth was finally coming to light. But instead of feeling relief, he felt deep sadness, a mix of pain for what he had lost and for what he could never recover. "Anna also said she knew about the birthmark because she had seen it when you were operated on," added the elder, looking at Samuel with compassionate eyes. "She asked for forgiveness, Samuel, though we know that won't change what she did to you." Silence reigned again in the church as Samuel processed what he had just heard. His mind was blank, and emotions swirled inside him, unable to find a way out. He knew he should say something, but the words refused to come. "I don't know what to say," he finally murmured, his voice broken. "So many years have passed. I've lost everything because of that lie. My family, my home, my faith. I don't know how to move on." The elderly woman approached him, taking his hand gently. "Samuel, we know that nothing we say or do will give back what you've lost. But we've come to offer our support, our apology for having judged and condemned you without proof. We want you to come back to the town, if you wish, and rebuild your life with those who support you." Samuel looked at the faces of the people around him, those who had once cast him out without hesitation. He could see the sincerity in their eyes, the regret for having unjustly condemned him. But he also knew that returning would mean facing the ghosts of the past, reliving the darkest moments of his life. "I appreciate your offer," he finally said, his voice soft but firm, "but my life is here now. I've found a place where I can be useful, where I can help those in need without being judged for something I didn't do. I don't know if I could go back and face everything I lost." The members of the congregation nodded, understanding his decision. They knew they couldn't ask him to return, not after all he had been through. Yet, they also knew that their visit had been necessary, not just for him, but for themselves, to close a dark chapter in their lives. "If you ever change your mind, Samuel," said the elderly woman, squeezing his hand affectionately, "you will always be welcome back. The town has changed, and so have we. We won't forget you." Samuel nodded, touched by her words, but feeling in his heart that his place was no longer in that town. He watched them as they rose and made their way to the door, knowing that while he could never forget what had happened, he could now at least find some peace. As the door closed behind them, Samuel was left alone in the church, his mind filled with memories and his heart relieved by Anna's confession. He knew his life would never be the same, but he also knew that the truth had finally come to light. And with that truth, perhaps, just perhaps, he could find the redemption he had been searching for. The wind blew fiercely through the small town, carrying with it the echo of whispers passing from house to house. Anna's confession, made just before her death, had shaken the community like lightning in the middle of a storm. The people who had been so quick to condemn Samuel now felt guilty and remorseful. The truth had come to light, and with it, the consciences of many awoke, realizing the grave mistake they had made. A group of elders gathered in the town square, under the shade of an old oak tree that had witnessed many important decisions over the years. They spoke in low voices, discussing how they could make amends for the wrong they had done to Samuel. "He was a good man," said Don Ricardo, one of the oldest in the village, his voice filled with sadness. "We shouldn't have turned our backs on him so quickly. It was a mistake we must now correct." "But how?" asked one of the younger men. "Samuel has been away for so long. I don't know if he will ever want to come back after what we did to him. We need to apologize, all of us," interjected Dona Elena, a woman with a strong character. "He deserves to know that the town wants him back, that we need his guidance, his wisdom. And we must do everything we can to give him back what we took from him." So, with the plan set, a delegation of the most respected members of the town prepared to go in search of Samuel once again. This time, not only to offer an apology but with the hope of bringing him back to the place where he had always belonged. Meanwhile, Samuel continued his quiet life in the new town. Anna's confession had lifted part of the burden he carried in his heart, but he still felt the loss of his family like an open wound that never fully healed. He was in the middle of a morning prayer when he heard footsteps approaching the church. Looking up, he saw the same faces that had come to find him before, but this time, there were more people with them, and their faces bore the marks of worry and regret. "Samuel," said Don Ricardo, taking the lead, "we come to you with a request. The town needs you, more than ever. We want you to come back, to reclaim your place as our pastor." Samuel looked at them in silence, letting their words sink into his mind. He had waited years to hear this, but now that it was right in front of him, he couldn't help but feel a mix of resentment and sadness. "You cast me out without even listening to me," Samuel responded, his voice firm but calm. "You judged me and condemned me based on a lie. I lost my wife, my children, 5 years of my life. And now you come asking me to return, as if nothing ever happened." The members of the group lowered their heads, ashamed. They knew Samuel's words were true, that they had made an unforgivable mistake. "We understand your pain, Samuel," said Donna Elena, stepping forward. "We know we cannot give you back those years, but we want to try. We want you to know that the town is calling for you, that we need you. And we are willing to do whatever it takes to help you recover what you lost." Samuel studied them for a long moment, evaluating the sincerity in their faces. He knew he couldn't simply forget what had happened, but he also knew that maybe, just maybe, returning to the town was the opportunity he needed to heal. "I will come back," he finally said, "but only under one condition. I want you to return to me my wife, my children, and the 5 years I lost. Without them, there's no point in coming back." The group exchanged glances, understanding the magnitude of Samuel's request. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to do whatever was necessary to make things right. "We will do everything we can, Samuel," said Don Ricardo. "We'll speak with your wife, with your children. We'll help them understand that they made a mistake in abandoning you, that you were always innocent. And we will bring you back to the place that should have always been your home." Samuel nodded, feeling that, for the first time in a long while, hope was rekindled in his heart. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew this was his chance to regain what he had lost. The group returned to the town with a clear mission, to restore what they had destroyed in Samuel's life. They knew convincing Samuel's wife, Marta, wouldn't be easy. Marta had suffered greatly after the accusation, and although deep in her heart she had always doubted the truth of Anna's words, the weight of social pressure and humiliation had led her to distance herself from Samuel and eventually make the difficult decision to separate from him. Don Ricardo and Donna Elena were the first to visit Marta. They found her in her small house, where she now lived alone with her children, on the outskirts of the town. When they opened the conversation, Marta listened in silence, her face serious and her eyes filled with a sadness she had learned to hide over the years. "Marta," began Donna Elena, gently taking the woman's hands, "we know that everything you've been through has been extremely painful. But we come to you with the truth. Anna, before she died, confessed that it was all a lie, that Samuel was always innocent." Marta's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. For years, she had struggled with the doubt and pain of having abandoned the man she loved, not knowing if she had made the right decision. "Samuel wants to return," continued Don Ricardo, "but he will only come back if he can be reunited with his family. He knows he has lost so much, but he still holds hope of reuniting with you and the children. It's the only condition he has set for his return." Marta looked at the elders, struggling to contain her emotions. She knew she still loved Samuel, that she had never stopped loving him, but she also knew that going back meant facing the pain of all those years of separation, of the wounds that had never fully healed. I don't know what to say," she finally murmured. "I've lived with this guilt, with this sadness for so long. I don't know if I can just forget everything and go back to being Samuel's wife as if nothing happened." "We're not asking you to forget," said Donna Elena, her voice soft. "We're asking you to forgive, to give Samuel a chance to show you that he is still the man you loved." Anna confessed, "Marta, because she knew she had destroyed you just as much as she had destroyed him. This is your chance to find the peace you deserve." Marta nodded slowly, letting Donna Elena's words sink into her heart. She knew she had a decision to make, and although fear and uncertainty still lingered, she also knew she couldn't keep living with this pain in her chest. "I'll talk to Samuel," she finally said, her voice trembling but determined. I want to hear what he has to say. I want to know if we can truly find a way to be a family again." With that decision, the entire town began to prepare for Samuel's return. The days that followed were filled with anticipation and anxiety as the news spread like wildfire among the villagers. Everyone was eager for the reunion, knowing their pastor was about to come back, but also aware that the future of Samuel and his family was still uncertain. Finally, the day came when Samuel was called back to the town. He arrived at sunset, as the sky turned a warm shade of orange, and was greeted by a crowd waiting for him in the town square. Among them was Marta, her eyes filled with tears and her heart pounding wildly. Samuel saw her from a distance and felt the love he had always had for her begin to fill his chest once more. He took a step forward, then another, until he stood in front of her, in the middle of the square, surrounded by the people who had been witnesses to their story. "Marta," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I've come back for you, for our children. I can't get back the years we've lost, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes for us to find the happiness that was taken from us." Marta looked into his eyes, searching for the sincerity she had always known. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she loved Samuel, that she had never stopped loving him. "Samuel," she began, her voice trembling, "I've spent so much time wishing this were true, that it had all been a lie. And now that I know the truth, I don't know how to start again. But I want to try. I want us to be a family again." Samuel nodded, feeling hope reignite in his heart. He stepped closer to her, and without saying another word, embraced her tightly, feeling the walls that had separated them for so long begin to crumble. The townspeople gathered around them, clapping and cheering the reunion of their pastor with his family. They knew they couldn't give him back the 5 years he had lost, but they also knew this was a new beginning, a chance for redemption and rebuilding. And so, in the middle of that small square, with the sun setting on the horizon, Samuel and Marta promised that from that day forward, they would do everything in their power to make up for lost time and build a future together, full of love and hope. The sun had set, leaving the stars to begin shining in the sky as Samuel's family returned to the house that had once been their home. Marta walked beside Samuel, their hands intertwined in a gesture that symbolized more than just a reunion. It represented a promise to never let anything come between them again. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with a peace they hadn't known in years. But at the same time, there was a weight in the air, a burden they both knew they would have to face in order to move forward. When they reached the house, Samuel's children, who had been watching from the window, ran out to greet them. Their faces were full of excitement and a bit of nervousness. It wasn't easy for them to understand everything that had happened, but they knew their father was back, and that was enough for now. "Dad, are you staying with us?" asked the youngest, looking up at Samuel with eyes full of hope. Samuel knelt to his son's level and gently stroked his hair with a tenderness he had missed so much. "Yes, son, I'm staying. I'm not leaving again," he replied, and the boy smiled before throwing himself into his father's arms, followed by his siblings. Marta watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She had feared this moment for so long, but now that it was happening, it felt as though a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Let's go inside," Samuel suggested, standing up and extending his hand to Marta. "It's time to start again." They entered the house together, where the atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold and lonely years they had endured. They sat at the dining table, and Marta served a simple dinner she had prepared earlier in the afternoon, before knowing that Samuel would return. It was a modest meal, but for them, it meant so much more. "Samuel," Marta began, breaking the silence as she served more soup to the children. "I want you to know that even though I can't change what happened, I'm willing to work to rebuild what we had. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to do it with you." Samuel looked at her with a soft expression, his eyes reflecting the same desire to heal and move forward. "Me too, Marta. I've spent these years wondering if I would ever get a second chance," and now that I have it, I'm not going to waste it. I want you to know that I will do everything I can to regain your trust and to ensure that our children grow up in a home filled with love." The children listened quietly, sensing the sincerity in their parents' words. For them, what mattered was that their family was together again, and that was all they needed to feel safe. After dinner, Samuel and Marta stayed alone in the living room, the children already in bed, exhausted from the day's excitement. The house was silent, and for the first time in years, that silence was not uncomfortable but comforting. "How will we do this, Samuel?" Marta asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How do we make up for the time we've lost?" Samuel looked at her with a gentle smile and took her hand. "We can't get back the time, Marta. But we can create new memories, stronger ones, full of love and understanding. What happened to us was a test, and although it hurt us, it also taught us the value of what we have. If we move forward with that knowledge, I believe we can overcome anything." Marta nodded, feeling Samuel's words resonate deep in her heart. It was true, they couldn't change the past, but the future was full of possibilities, and now they had the chance to write a new story together. The days that followed were filled with adjustments and rediscovery. Samuel returned to preaching at the church, this time with a congregation that welcomed him with open arms, eager to listen to his teachings with renewed faith. His experience had given him a new perspective, and his sermons were deeper, filled with empathy and understanding for human weakness. Marta, for her part, dedicated herself to rebuilding the home that had been fractured. It wasn't easy at first, but with every small gesture, with every kind word, they began to heal the wounds that time and lies had left. They supported each other, fully aware that the love they shared was stronger than any obstacle. One day, while they were walking together through the fields, Samuel stopped and looked at Marta with a smile. "Do you remember what you said the first time we talked after I came back?" he asked, his eyes filled with tenderness. Marta looked at him, trying to recall, and then nodded. "I said I didn't know how to start over," she replied with a soft smile. "Exactly," Samuel said. "And look where we are now. Not only have we started over, but we've built something much stronger. I can't imagine my life without you, Marta, and I'm grateful every day for this second chance." Marta looked at him, feeling her heart fill with love for the man standing beside her. "Me too, Samuel. I don't know what the future holds for us, but as long as we're together, I know we can face anything." They embraced in silence, feeling the peace and happiness that can only be found when love has been tested by fire and come out stronger on the other side. Samuel's return to the town not only meant the restoration of his family but also the renewal of a community that had learned the importance of truth, forgiveness, and compassion. Life moved on, but with a new sense of purpose and unity, knowing that despite the difficulties, there is always a chance to begin again. And so, under the same starry sky that had seen them part, Samuel and Marta walked together toward their future, knowing they had overcome the greatest test of their lives and that, in the end, true love had prevailed. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you've gone through a similar experience of betrayal, feel free to share your valuable opinion. I'd be honored if you left a like, shared this video with a friend or family member, and subscribed to the channel. Don't miss the next incredible story that's appearing on your screen right now. We have exclusive entertainment guaranteed just for you. See you in the next video.